The wind howled a mournful song across the frozen landscape, rattling the thin panes of glass in the observation post. Corporal Alex Miller shivered, pulling his worn military-issue blanket tighter around his shoulders. Outside, the world was a vast canvas of white and gray, an endless expanse of snow stretching to meet a sky heavy with unseen clouds. It was Christmas Eve, and Alex, stationed at this desolate, forgotten outpost miles from anywhere, felt the chilling grip of loneliness more acutely than ever. Most of the other guys had rotated out, either sent home on leave or reassigned to warmer, more populated bases for the holidays. Alex, having volunteered for a longer deployment to save up more of his re-enlistment bonus, had found himself the odd man out. He'd thought he was tough, that he could handle the isolation. But the silence of Christmas Eve, broken only by the incessant wind and the occasional crackle of the two-way radio on the desk, was a different kind of beast. It clawed at him, reminding him of bustling family kitchens, the scent of pine and cookies, the laughter of his younger sister, Lily. He leaned his forehead against the cold glass, his breath fogging the pain. Could see the faint, distant outline of the tree line, dark and skeletal against the snow. Beyond that, nothing, just miles and miles of untouched wilderness. His watch shifted uncomfortably on his wrist. Only 6 more hours until his shift ended, then another 18 until Christmas Day was officially over. He counted down the minutes like a prisoner. Alex remembered last Christmas. His mom had tried to knit him a scarf, but it came out looking more like a lopsided green snake. His dad had grumbled about the cost of everything, but his eyes sparkled when Lily, all of 8 years old, shrieked with delight over a new doll. Those memories, usually a comfort, now felt like cruel taunts. Highlighting the stark contrast with his current reality, here there was no festive cheer, no carols, no warmth. Just the hum of the generator and the occasional scrape of his boot against the concrete floor. He sighed, pushing away from the window. He walked over to the desk, running a hand over the cold metal of his rifle propped against the wall. His MRE dinner, a congealed mass of something vaguely chicken-like, sat untouched on a small table. He wasn't hungry. Loneliness was a peculiar kind of hunger, one that no food could satisfy. Picked up a worn photograph from his wallet. His family smiling broadly on a summer day years ago. His mom, his dad, and Lily, missing 2 front teeth, beaming up at him. A pang shot through him, sharp and painful. He missed them terribly. Suddenly, a flicker. Alex lowered the photo, his eyes narrowing as he peered back out into the snowstorm. Was it just the snow playing tricks on his eyes? He squinted, trying to pierce through the swirling white. No. There it was again. A faint pulsing light, far off in the distance, maybe half a mile out, near the edge of the tree line. It wasn't steady like a vehicle headlight, but rather an irregular, almost rhythmic glow, like a firefly trapped in a jar, struggling to break free. He grabbed his binoculars, raising them to his eyes. The light was still too indistinct, blurred by the falling snow. It seemed to grow slightly brighter, then dim, like a weak signal trying to connect. He scanned the area around it but saw nothing else. No vehicle tracks, no other signs of life. This outpost was supposed to be isolated. The nearest town was a 4-hour drive. And the only road in was barely maintained. Its military training kicked in threat. Dismay. He reached for the radio, his finger hovering over the transmit button. Should he report it? It was probably nothing, just a trick of the light, an overactive imagination, fooled by too much solitude and not enough sleep. But the light pulsed again, a little stronger this time, seeming to draw closer, almost beckoning. It had a strange, almost inviting warmth to it, despite the frigid landscape. Reporting a phantom light would make him sound like he was cracking under the pressure, which he definitely wasn't. Not yet, anyway. He decided to observe it for a few more minutes. The wind picked up, rattling the windows more violently, and a fresh wave of snow obliterated the view for a moment. When it cleared, the light was unmistakably closer, and now he could make out a shape. A silhouette tall and distinct, moving through the swirling snow. It wasn't a trick of the light. Someone or something was out there, and it was heading straight for his post. A knot of apprehension tightened in his stomach. Alone in the middle of nowhere, on Christmas Eve, with a mysterious stranger approaching through a blizzard. This was not how he'd envisioned the holidays. He gripped his rifle tighter, his eyes fixed on the approaching figure, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. The silence of Christmas Eve had just been broken, but by what or whom he had no idea, and a strange, unexplainable sense of wonder battling with his apprehension began to stir deep within him. The silhouette grew larger with each passing minute, resolving slowly from an indistinct shadow into the form of a man. Alex's hand instinctively went to the communication cord to radio in, but he held back. There was something different about this figure. He wasn't moving like someone struggling against a blizzard. He seemed almost to glide, unperturbed by the biting wind and the deepening snowdrifts. It was unnatural, like something out of a dream. As the figure closed the distance, Alex could finally make out details. He wasn't wearing standard winter gear, no heavy parka or snow boots. Instead, he wore a dark, form-fitting suit, the kind you'd see on a stage, not in a snowstorm. A high collar, a wide belt, and what looked like a cape, or a very long coat, fluttering around him even through the binoculars. It seemed unreal. And then he saw the hair, jet black, swept back from his forehead with prominent sideburns. A chill ran down Alex's spine, but it wasn't from a cold, it was from pure, unadulterated binoculars. Slowly, his mouth slightly agape. But who would orchestrate such a thing here in the middle of nowhere just for him? And how would they have gotten here undetected? The figure stopped about 50 yards from the observation post, his hands on his hips, his head tilted slightly, as if appraising the small, isolated building. Even at that distance, Alex could feel an undeniable aura radiating from him, a presence that filled the otherwise empty, silent night. He looked calm, completely at ease. And then he did something that removed all doubt, or rather threw all logic out the window entirely. He winked, a slow, deliberate wink, visible even through the swirling snow. Alex shook his head, rubbing his eyes. He must be sleep-deprived. Hallucinating, this was a classic sign. He took a deep breath, trying to ground himself. "This is Corporal Alex Miller," he called out, his voice hoarse, echoing faintly in the stillness. "Identify yourself, state your purpose." The figure chuckled, a low, resonant sound that somehow carried over the wind. Then he began to walk again, directly towards the steel door of the outpost. He didn't seem armed, but Alex kept his rifle raised just in case. His military training screamed threat, but every fiber of his being was screaming impossible. The man reached the door, unhurried, and actually knocked. 3 distinct firm raps. Alex stared at the door, then back at the figure through the reinforced glass. He had to open it. Couldn't just leave someone out there, no matter how unbelievable their appearance. But caution was paramount. He radioed quickly. "Control, this is Outpost 7. I have an unidentified individual at my door. Requesting instructions." The radio crackled. "Outpost 7, say again. Unidentified individual. Miller, are you seeing things? We have no inbound traffic, no personnel authorized for your sector. Negative. Control. I have a man dressed oddly at my door. He just walked up through the blizzard requesting permission to allow entry. Pending identification. Miller, maintain position. Do not open the door. We'll send a team to investigate when the weather clears." "Sir, the weather isn't clearing, and he's standing right there." Alex looked at the man again. He was leaning against the doorframe now, almost casually, a faint smile playing on his lips. His black hair was barely dusted with snow. His suit seemed untouched by the cold. "Miller, that's an order. Do not open the door." Alex sighed. He looked at the man. The man shrugged, then gestured towards the door with an inviting hand, as if saying, "Well, come on in. Why don't you?" Screw the orders. Alex thought he couldn't leave a living person out in this. And if this was some kind of elaborate mind game, he needed to know. He lowered his rifle slightly, took a deep breath, and unlatched the heavy steel door. A gust of icy wind immediately swept into the small room, bringing with it a dusting of snow. The man stepped inside, closing the door quietly behind him, as if he'd just popped over from next door. He stood there, dripping slightly but still looking remarkably composed. "Well, hello there, son," the man said, his voice a low, smooth baritone, rich with a distinct southern drawl. "Mighty cold out tonight, ain't it?" Alex stared. The sideburns, the perfectly coiffed hair, the piercing blue eyes, the slight sneer that was more charm than arrogance, the voice. It was unmistakable. Every billboard, every record album, every concert poster he'd ever seen. The King. Elvis. Alex managed to whisper, his voice barely audible. He still couldn't quite believe it. He died decades ago. The man smiled, a dazzling, genuine smile that seemed to light up the dim room. "Last time I checked, that was... endured. But you're dead," Alex stammered, feeling utterly foolish even as he said it. Elvis chuckled, a rich rolling sound that filled the small space. He ran a hand through his perfectly sculpted hair. "Well, bless your heart, son. Reports of my demise have been greatly exaggerated, I suppose." He winked again, a playful twinkle in his eyes. "Or maybe I just decided to pop by for a Christmas visit. A man gets tired of the afterlife, you know, especially on Christmas Eve." Alex just stared, his rifle still loosely held, in his grip. His mind was in a complete tailspin. Elvis Presley, here in his lonely outpost. This was either the most elaborate hallucination of his life, or the beginning of something truly incredible and utterly insane. Alex slowly lowered his rifle, leaning it against the wall. His mind was still reeling, trying desperately to reconcile what his eyes were seeing and what his brain knew to be impossible. Elvis Presley, here in this cramped, desolate outpost. Elvis, seemingly unfazed by Alex's stunned silence, glanced around the small room. It was sparse. A metal cot, a rickety table, a two-way radio, a few storage crates, and Alex's gear, neatly stacked in a corner. A single bare bulb hung from the ceiling, casting a harsh yellow light. "Cozy," Elvis remarked, a slight tilt of his head. He didn't sound sarcastic, just observant. He ran a gloved hand over the cold metal of the table. "Though I reckon it gets mighty lonely out here, especially on a night like this." Alex swallowed hard. How did you get here?" he finally managed to ask, his voice still a little shaky. "There's nothing for miles. And the blizzard," Elvis just smiled, a gentle, knowing smile. He walked over to the small, grimy window and peered out into the swirling snow. "Oh, a little snow ain't gonna stop Elvis from making a house call, not when he's got a feeling someone needs a little company." He turned back to Alex, his blue eyes holding a deep, almost ancient understanding. "Some things are just meant to be, son, especially round Christmas." He avoided the direct question, and Alex found himself not pushing it. The sheer impossibility of his presence was overwhelming enough, without trying to dissect the physics of his arrival. Maybe he wasn't supposed to know. Maybe it was just magic. "Come on," Elvis said, gesturing towards the small cot. "You look like you could use a break and a cup of something warm." Alex blinked. "We don't have much here, sir. Just instant coffee or lukewarm water from the dispenser." Elvis chuckled. "Well, now that won't do for Christmas Eve, will it?" He reached into the inner pocket of his dazzling suit jacket. Alex watched, mesmerized, as Elvis pulled out not a wallet or a phone, but a small, intricate thermos, silver and shining. Then from another pocket, a small wrapped package. "Got a little something special for you," Elvis said, his eyes twinkling. He uncapped the thermos, and a rich, sweet aroma of spiced cider immediately filled the air, chasing away the stale smell of military rations and cold metal. He poured the steaming liquid into 2 battered tin mugs Alex kept on the table. "Here you go," son Elvis said, handing Alex one of the mugs. The mud felt surprisingly warm in Alex's cold hands. He took a hesitant sip. The cider was sweet, with notes of cinnamon and apple, and it warmed him from the inside out. It was the most comforting thing he'd tasted in months. "And this," Elvis added, pushing the wrapped package towards him, "just a little Christmas treat from me to you." Alex looked at the package. It was wrapped in simple brown paper, tied with a bit of red twine. He slowly unwrapped it. Inside was a single, perfectly baked gingerbread man cookie. "Thank you, sir." Elvis just nodded, taking a sip of his own cider. "Ain't no need for sir, Alex, just Elvis. And you welcome, son. Christmas ain't Christmas without a little bit of sweetness." They sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the gentle hum of the generator. The cider warmed Alex's hands, and the scent of gingerbread filled the air. It felt impossibly normal, despite the bizarre circumstances. "You know," Elvis began, his voice soft, "I spent a fair few Christmases away from home myself, in the army, over in Germany. It's a lonely thing, being forny. Being exterrolled. B. Here was a legend, a global icon sitting in his humble outpost, sharing a moment of quiet understanding. It felt strangely intimate, like talking to an old friend. "Yeah," Alex finally said. "It's pretty rough, especially tonight." Took another sip of cider, letting the warmth spread through him. "Everyone else got to go home. I volunteered to stay. Thought I could handle it." He gave a humorless chuckle. "Guess I was wrong." Elvis leaned back slightly, his eyes still fixed on Alex. "It ain't about being wrong, son. It's about being human. We all need connection. Especially when the world tries to make us feel small and alone. And Christmas, well, Christmas has a way of amplifying everything, good or bad. So tell me," Elvis said, his voice gentle, "what does Christmas mean to you? What do you miss most about it?" Alex hesitated, then looked down at the gingerbread man in his hand. The simple cookie felt heavy laden with memories. He thought of Lily, of his mom's cooking, of the worn ornaments on their family tree. And for the first time in a long time, in the quiet, real presence of Elvis Presley, Alex felt a tiny crack appear in the wall of ice around his heart. He felt a tentative urge to speak, to share the burden of his loneliness. And somehow he knew Elvis would listen. Alex looked at the gingerbread man, then at Elvis. It was absurd sitting here with Elvis Presley talking about Christmas. Yet it was also the most real conversation he'd had in months. "What do I miss most?" Alex repeated, his voice quiet. He traced the raisin eyes on the cookie. "Everything. I guess the smell of pine needles, even though we always had a fake tree. My mom's sugar cookies, the ones she only made at Christmas, they were always a little burnt on the bottom, but perfect. And my dad, he'd always put on those old Paimon records, Nat King Cole and Bing Crosby. He'd complain about the volume, but he'd tap his foot." Elvis nodded slowly, a nostalgic look in his eyes. "Ah, the classics. There's something timeless about those old tunes, ain't there? They just wrap you up like a warm blanket." "Yeah," Alex agreed. "And Lily, my little sister, she loved Christmas lights. She'd drag me out into the snow even when it was freezing, just to look at the neighbors' houses. She said they were like stars on the ground." He paused, a shadow passing over his face. "She was always so full of wonder." Elvis listened intently, his gaze unwavering, full of genuine empathy. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer platitudes. He just listened. "We had this tradition," Alex continued, the words coming easier, now flowing out like a dam breaking. "Every Christmas Eve we'd watch It's a Wonderful Life. My dad would fall asleep halfway through, and my mom would pretend not to notice. Lily would cuddle up between us, and sometimes, if I was lucky, she'd fall asleep with her head on my shoulder. It was the only night of the year I really tolerated her clinging." He chuckled, a bittersweet sound. "Sounds like some beautiful memories, Alex," Elvis said softly. "It's good to hold on to those They're like treasures, ain't they? Especially when you're far from home. He leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees. I remember my mama's cooking. She made the best fried chicken. Bless her heart, and her corn pone nobody could make it. Like Mama, a faraway look entered his eyes. He paused, then hummed a quiet, familiar tune. It was soft, almost a whisper, but unmistakable. Blue Christmas. Not the full booming version from his records, but a tender, melancholic rendition just for Alex. His voice, even hushed, was rich and soulful, filling the small, cold room with a warmth that had nothing to do with the cider. It wasn't a performance. It was a sharing, a comfort. Alex felt a strange mix of emotions. It was surreal beyond belief. Here was Elvis Presley singing to him personally in a desolate military outpost, understanding his loneliness. It was like a dream, but he could feel the cold metal of the mug, smell the gingerbread, hear the real human voice. When Elvis finished, the quiet lingered, profound and meaningful. "You miss your sister a lot, don't you?" Elvis said, his voice gentle. It wasn't a question, but an observation. There was an undercurrent in Alex's voice, a deeper sadness beyond just missing family. Alex looked down at the table, picking at a loose thread on his blanket. "Yeah," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "More than words can say." He remembered her laughter, her bright inquisitive eyes, her small hand in his. A wave of guilt, cold and heavy, washed over him. "You know," Elvis continued, his voice still soft, "loss is a funny thing. It carves a hole right through you. And sometimes we try to fill that hole with all sorts of things. Work, distractions. Yet on days like Christmas, it feels even bigger." He looked at Alex. "You mentioned Lily, always being full of wonder. That's a beautiful thing to remember. She sounds like she brought a lot of light into your life." Alex nodded, his throat tight. He swallowed, then looked up, meeting Elvis's gaze. She did, he did. Conversation had shifted, moving beyond the simple longing for home to something deeper, something Alex had kept buried for a long time. Elvis, with his gentle probing and profound understanding, seemed to be leading him there to the heart of his quiet pain. And surprisingly, Alex found he was willing to follow. The presence of the king, this improbable visitor, had created a safe space, a sanctuary where he felt for the first time in years that he could finally breathe and truly be seen. The warmth from the cider and the surprising intimacy of the conversation had begun to melt some of the ice around Alex's heart. He felt a strange compulsion to unburden himself, to tell Elvis something he hadn't spoken aloud to anyone. "Lily, she was sick," Alex began, his voice barely above a whisper. He fidgeted with the hem of his blanket. "When she was little, heart condition," he swallowed hard, remembering the hospital visits, the hushed conversations, the doctors with their grave faces. "We thought she was getting better. She had surgery when she was 6. It was supposed to fix things." Elvis listened, his expression solemn, his eyes reflecting a deep understanding of pain. I was 17, trying to be a tough guy, getting ready to enlist." Alex shook his head, a bitter taste in his mouth. "She had a checkup, just routine. And I had a buddy. He wanted me to go out, hang out, do stupid stuff. I told my mom I'd go with them to the hospital, but then I just didn't." He took a shaky breath. "I chose to go mess around instead because I was too old for kid stuff like hospital visits." He paused, the memory sharp and unforgiving. That day, the doctors found something new, a complication, something they missed before, or something that developed quickly. She went in for emergency surgery and she didn't make it out. The words hung heavy in the air. Alex stared at his hands, remembering the phone call, the frantic rush to the hospital, his parents' tear-streaked faces, cold, empty space in their lives that Lily used to fill with her bright energy. "It was years ago," Alex said, his voice cracking. but it still feels like yesterday. I know it's not logical. I know it wasn't my fault. I wasn't a doctor. I couldn't have done anything." He looked up, his eyes pleading for understanding. "But I can't shake the feeling. If I had been there, if I hadn't been so selfish, maybe things would have been different. Maybe I could have stopped something. Or at least been there for her." He looked away, embarrassed by the raw emotion he was showing. He hadn't cried about Lily in years, not openly. He had buried the grief, packed it down deep under layers of duty and stoicism. But Elvis's presence, his quiet empathy, had somehow cracked the facade. Elvis reached out, placing a gentle, reassuring hand on Alex's shoulder. His touch was warm, comforting. "Alex," he said, his voice low and steady, "that's the burden of love, ain't it? When we lose someone we love, we automatically look for reasons, for fault, and often we find it in ourselves, even when there's none to be found." He squeezed Alex's shoulder. "I know that feeling. Son, I lost my mama when I'm a world, and for a long time, I carried this weight, this feeling that maybe I could have done more, been there more. Maybe if I wasn't so busy chasing dreams, I could have stopped time somehow." His eyes were distant for a moment, lost in his own past. "That's the thing about life and death, Alex. It's bigger than any of us. We can't control it, no matter how much we wish we could." Elvis's vulnerability, his shared experience of profound loss, was a revelation. It wasn't just a famous singer. It was a man who knew grief, who understood the ache of regret. "Lily wouldn't want you carrying that burden," Alex Elvis continued, his voice earnest. "Not one bit you think about her. What would she say? Would she want you to spend your Christmases or any day weighed down by what-ifs?" Alex shook his head slowly. "No," he whispered. "She'd probably make a face and tell me to stop being so mopey." A small, watery smile touched his lips. "Exactly," Elvis said, patting his shoulder. "She sounds like a bright-spirited girl and bright-spirited souls. They don't want the ones they left behind to live in shadows. They want them to find the light to carry on their own light in the world." Pulled his hand back, then poured a little more cider into Alex's mug. "It's natural to feel that way, Alex, that guilt, but it's a heavy chain, and Christmas, it's a time for light, for hope, for remembering the good, not just the pain." Alex took a shaky breath, the conversation both agonizing and incredibly relieving. It was like lancing a wound he hadn't even realized was festering. "You remember the good things about Lily," Elvis said, his voice gentle and encouraging. "The way she laughed, the way she looked at Christmas lights, the way she cuddled up on your shoulder. Those are her gifts to you. Memories that no pain can ever take away. Hold on to those, Alex. Carrying a burden, but by carrying her light within you." Alex felt a tear escape and roll down his cheek, quickly wiped it away. But for the first time, the tears felt like a release, not a weakness. He looked at Elvis, truly. Looked at him, and saw not just a legend, but a compassionate soul, sent perhaps by fate or something more to help him carry a weight he'd been shouldering alone for too long. The air in the small outpost room felt lighter after Alex confessed his deepest fear and regret about Lily. The raw honesty had been painful but also cathartic. He looked at Elvis, still reeling from the unexpected comfort and understanding he had received. "You're right," Alex said, his voice a little clearer now, though still hoarse. "She wouldn't want me to be sad. She hated it when anyone was sad. She'd always try to cheer you up." He remembered Lily once bringing him a lopsided daisy she'd picked after he'd scraped his knee, her tiny hand gripping his finger, her earnest face full of concern. "That's a beautiful spirit to remember," Elvis affirmed, his gaze warm. "And that spirit, that love, it doesn't just vanish. Alex, it lives on in the hearts of those who loved her. And in the way you choose to live your life. Every time you find joy, every time you laugh, every time you help someone, you're carrying a piece of her with you." Elvis leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped. "Grief ain't something you just get over. Son, it's something you learn to live with. It can feel like a heavy rock, or it can become a smooth stone in your pocket. A reminder of love that's still there. The key is to let yourself feel it. Truly feel it, pain consume you. Pause, then continued. My mama, she always said, son, sorrow is a part of life, but it ain't the whole story. You gotta find the music in the silence and the light in the darkness. And she was right. Life goes on, and we owe it to the ones to experience new joys. Alex considered his words. He had been living in a sort of emotional dormancy, pushing down feelings, avoiding things that reminded him too much of home, of Lily. His enlistment, his dedication to duty, it had all been a way to keep busy, to avoid the quiet moments where the grief could creep in. I guess I've just been running, Alex admitted quietly. Running from it, thinking if I didn't think about it, it wouldn't hurt. Elvis nodded. A lot of us do that, Alex. It's human nature to avoid pain, but sometimes you gotta walk right through it to get to the other side, and when you do, you find out you're stronger than you ever thought, and you're never truly alone even when it feels like it. You got folks looking out for you in ways you might not even realize, like tonight. Alex looked around the room, then back at Elvis. A small, faint smile touched his lips. Yeah, he said, a genuine laugh escaping him for the first time in days. Like tonight, definitely something I never would have realized. Elvis chuckled, a warm, resonant sound. See, even in the middle of a blizzard on Christmas Eve, a little magic can find its way in. What about you, Elvis? Alex asked, feeling bold enough now. You must have faced a lot of loneliness, too, with your life. All the fame, all the people, but still I imagine it could be lonely at the top. Elvis's expression softened, a hint of melancholy entering his eyes. You're right, son. It's a different kind of lonely. You're surrounded by millions, adored by all, but sometimes you feel like nobody really sees you. They see the king, the legend, the performer, but they don't see the man who just misses his mama's cooking or wishes he could sit on his porch and play guitar without 1,000 flashbulbs going off. He sighed softly. It's a heavy crown to wear sometimes, and the more famous you get, the smaller your inner circle gets, and the harder it is to tell who's genuine and who's just there for the ride. He looked directly at Alex. That's why moments like this, Alex, are precious. Genuine connection, just two souls sharing a moment, seeing each other for who they truly are. It's rarer than gold. The honesty was disarming. Alex felt a surge of respect for this man, not just for his talent, but for his humility and wisdom. He wasn't just a star. He was a human being who had navigated profound challenges and found wisdom in them. So Elvis said, clapping his hands together softly, a new energy in his voice. We've done enough moping for one Christmas Eve. Tomorrow's Christmas Day, and even in this humble abode, we're gonna celebrate. Alex felt a flicker of hope, a warmth spreading through him that had nothing to do with the cider. He looked at the gingerbread man, took a bite. It was sweet, familiar, comforting. For the first time, he felt like he could actually enjoy a Christmas memory without the accompanying wave of pain. With Elvis's gentle guidance, he felt like he was finally beginning to understand that it was okay to carry both the love and the loss, and that choosing joy wasn't a betrayal of grief, but a testament to the enduring power of love. When Alex awoke, the first thing he noticed wasn't the cold, but a distinct smell of something delicious sizzling. He blinked, pushing himself up from the cot. The single bare bulb was still on, but now a small portable stove, one he hadn't seen before, sat on the small table, and standing over it humming a low tune was Elvis. He was still in his flamboyant stage suit, but now he had rolled up his sleeves. On the stove, a small pan sizzled with what looked like perfectly cooked eggs and strips of bacon, and next to it 2 mugs of what smelled like fresh, strong coffee. "Morning, sleepyhead," Elvis said, turning with a grin. "Merry Christmas, son." Alex stared. "Merry Christmas," he mumbled, still trying to process the scene. Where? How did you get all this? Elvis just winked. The eggs were fluffy, the bacon perfectly crisp. It tasted like a 5-star breakfast. This is amazing, Alex said. Genuinely, seriously, how? Just enjoy it, Alex. Elvis chuckled. Sometimes you just gotta let the good things happen. And trust me, after all you've been carrying, you deserve a good meal. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the only sound the clinking of forks and the distant howl of the wind, which somehow seemed less threatening now. After they finished, Elvis leaned back, patting his stomach contentedly. All right, Alex, Christmas morning. What's Christmas without a little music? Alex smiled. I guess it wouldn't be Christmas for me without hearing some of your songs after all the years listening to your records at my grandparents' house. Elvis chuckled a warm, rich sound. Well, I suppose I could oblige that. He reached down beside the table and produced a small acoustic guitar from seemingly nowhere. It was a beautiful instrument, well worn, but polished with a deep, resonant finish. My favorite, Elvis murmured, running a hand over the strings. He looked at Alex. What'll it be, son? We got Christmas tunes gospel, something to make you tap your feet. Alex thought for a moment. How about Silent Night? He suggested. It's always been one of my favorites. He strummed a few chords, and then his voice, full and rich, filled the small room. It was a raw, soulful rendition, devoid of any stage artifice, just pure emotion. He sang Silent Night, then O Holy Night, his voice soaring and dipping, filling the desolate outpost with a sacred beauty. Alex closed his eyes, listening, feeling the music seep into his bones, soothing the ache he'd carried for so long. It was more than just a performance. It was a prayer, a comfort, a gift. After the Christmas carols, Elvis paused. How about something to lift your spirits a little more, son? He smiled, a mischievous glint in his eyes. Sometimes the best way to mend a broken heart is with a little rock and roll. He strummed the guitar, then launched into a quiet, bluesy rendition of Love Me Tender, followed by a surprisingly mellow Can't Help Falling in Love. He wasn't performing for a crowd, he was singing for Alex, personally. Each note, each lyric was delivered with a gentle warmth, like a musical embrace. Alex found himself tapping his foot, a genuine smile spreading across his face. The music was therapeutic, washing away the last vestiges of his gloom. When Elvis finished, the room felt brighter, filled with a lingering warmth. Thank you, Elvis, Alex said, his voice sincere. That was I don't even have words. Elvis just winked. My pleasure, Alex. Anytime. That's what music's for, ain't it? To make you feel something, to connect you to something bigger than yourself. He then reached into another hidden pocket of his suit and pulled out a small, intricately carved wooden bird. It was a tiny hummingbird, delicately painted, its wings spread as if in flight. This is for you, Elvis said, handing it to Alex. A little Christmas to remind you that even the smallest, most fragile, that even the smallest. When you're alone, you can always find freedom and lightness, just like a hummingbird in flight. Alex took the bird, turning it over in his palm. It was exquisite, obviously handmade with great care. It's beautiful. Elvis, thank you. Merry Christmas, Alex, Elvis said, his smile genuine and full of warmth. And remember, son, this isn't just about a day on the calendar. It's about a feeling of hope, of peace, and of knowing that even in the darkest of nights, there's always a light waiting to break through. This impossible visit, this magical Christmas day, had brought him more peace and healing than he could have ever imagined. Elvis wasn't just a visitor. He was a catalyst, a guide helping Alex find the buried light within himself. The hours that followed were unlike anything Alex could have ever imagined. He and Elvis talked not just about the past, but about life, about dreams, about the future. Elvis spoke of the importance of kindness, of truly seeing people, and of using one's gifts, whatever they may be, to bring joy to the world. "You got a good heart, Alex," Elvis said, leaning back in the rickety chair. "And that's a gift more precious than any record deal or golden record. You got empathy, you care. Don't ever let the hardness of the world dull that." Alex felt a blush rise to his cheeks. He wasn't used to such direct compliments, especially from someone like Elvis. "I try," he said simply. "It's hard out here sometimes. You see a lot of things, and being alone, it makes you question a lot." "It does," Elvis agreed. "Loneliness has a way of stripping everything bare, but that can be a good thing too. It shows you what truly matters, and what truly matters, Alex, is love. Love for others, and love for yourself." He looked at the small wooden hummingbird Alex was still holding. "Your sister Lily, her love for you, it's still there. It's in those memories. It's in the way you remember her light. Don't let the guilt dim that light. She wouldn't want that." The heavy knot in his chest, the one that had been there for years, felt like it was finally unraveling. Elvis wasn't just telling him things, he was making him feel them, truly feel the possibility of healing. "What about after your service, Alex?" Elvis asked, changing the subject slightly. "What do you plan to do?" Alex shrugged. "I haven't really thought about it much. Just get out, maybe find a quiet job, something steady, I don't know." He hadn't dared to dream much beyond finishing his tour. "Well, now, a young man like you, with a good head on his shoulders, you gotta have some dreams," Elvis said, his voice encouraging. "Life's too short to just settle, son. Especially after all you've seen, all you've learned." "What truly makes your heart sing?" Alex thought about it. He used to love drawing when he was a kid. He was pretty good at sketching landscapes. And he used to write short stories, fantastical adventures that he would read to Lily. "I used to like to draw," Alex admitted, a little shyly, "and write stories." Elvis's eyes lit up. "Well, there you go. See, you got gifts, Alex, talent. Don't let those gather dust. Life's about creating, about sharing your unique vision with the world, and who knows, maybe you could draw some of these beautiful snowy landscapes you see out here, or write stories about the lessons you've learned. You remember that spirit Lily had, that's just buried under some hard times? You got to dig it out, live a life that would make her proud, not just because you're a good soldier, but because you're a good, happy man. That's the real victory." Alex felt a profound shift within him. He hadn't realized how much he had shrunk his own world, how much he had given up on himself beyond his military duties. Elvis wasn't just comforting him, he was challenging him, pushing him to embrace life again. Just to be a hand to hold, a voice to listen, and maybe a little spark to help you find your own way back to the light. The words hung in the air, simple yet profound. Alex understood. This wasn't just a celebrity showing up for a Christmas miracle. This was a soul, a presence embodying compassion and hope, reaching out to another soul in need. The how of Elvis's arrival didn't matter anymore. All that mattered was the why. And the why was love, kindness, and the enduring power of human connection, even across impossible divides. Alex felt a lightness he hadn't experienced in years. The heavy weight of guilt had diminished, replaced by a quiet resolve. He looked at the wooden hummingbird, then out the window at the still, snowy landscape. But this time he saw not just desolation, but a hint of stark beauty. A canvas waiting to be drawn, stories waiting to be written. He saw possibility. And it was all thanks to the most unexpected Christmas visitor he could have ever imagined. The soft glow of dawn was beginning to paint the horizon, filtering through the heavy clouds outside. The quiet hum of the generator filled the comfortable silence that had settled between Alex and Elvis. They had been talking for hours, sharing more than just stories, sharing spirits, sharing a connection that transcended time and fame. Elvis stood up, stretching his arms above his head with a gentle sigh. Well, Alex, time waits for no man, not even the king. And my ride's gonna be here soon. A pang of sadness shot through Alex. He knew this moment was coming, but he didn't want it to. He wanted Elvis to stay, to keep talking, to keep filling the lonely space with his warmth and wisdom. "You're leaving?" Alex asked, his voice low. Elvis nodded, a gentle smile on his face. "All good things gotta come to an end, son, but the lessons, the memories, they stay with you. That's the real gift." He walked over to Alex, who was still sitting clutching a small wooden hummingbird. "I hope I helped a little tonight," Alex, Elvis said, his voice earnest. "You're a good man with a good heart. Don't let your past define your future. Let it guide you, sure, but don't let it shackle you." Alex looked up at him, his eyes swimming with emotion. "You helped more than you could possibly know, Elvis. I don't know how I can ever thank you." Elvis chuckled softly. "Ain't no thanks necessary, son. Just promise me one thing." He looked directly into Alex's eyes, his gaze steady and deep. "Promise me you'll find that joy again that wonder Lily saw in the world, and promise me you'll remember that you're never truly alone, not when you carry love in your heart." "I promise," Alex said, his voice thick with emotion. Elvis reached into his suit jacket again. This time he pulled out a simple black guitar pick. It looked worn, slightly chipped, as if it had been used for countless melodies. He pressed it into Alex's palm, folding Alex's fingers around it. "This here," Elvis said, "is my lucky pick. Played a few good songs with this one. Keep it, and every time you feel lost or alone, just hold it. And remember, the music's always there, Alex. You just gotta listen." Then back at Elvis. It was a tangible piece of the impossible, a physical reminder that this wasn't a dream. "And one more thing," Elvis added, his voice dropping slightly, becoming more serious. "When you get back home, Alex, talk to your folks. Tell them you miss them. Tell them you love them, and tell them about Lily, about the wonderful things you remember. Share that burden, Alex. Don't carry it alone. That's what families," tears welling in his eyes. He hadn't allowed himself to talk about Lily with his parents, thinking it would only make them sadder or that they wouldn't understand his specific guilt. But Elvis was right. He needed to share. A soft, almost imperceptible hum filled the air like a distant ethereal chord. Elvis glanced towards the window. "That's my ride," he said. With a slight smile, he extended his hand. "Well, Alex, it's been a real pleasure. Merry Christmas, son." Alex grasped Elvis's hand. It was firm, warm, real. "Merry Christmas, Elvis," he choked out. "Thank you for everything." Elvis gave him a final understanding smile, then turned and walked towards the steel door of the outpost. He opened it, and as he stepped out into the still swirling snow, a faint, almost invisible glow seemed to emanate from him, illuminating the falling flakes around him. Alex watched, mesmerized, as Elvis walked away from the outpost, his figure slowly becoming indistinct against the white backdrop, just as he had arrived. The glow brightened for a fleeting moment, like a final brilliant flash, then faded entirely. And then he was gone. The wind howled, but it sounded different. Now not so lonely. The outpost felt colder, emptier, without Elvis's vibrant presence, but also changed. Quiet echo of warmth remained, a lingering melody in the air. Alex stood there for a long time, the guitar pick warm in his hand, staring out at the spot where the king had disappeared. It was surreal, impossible, and undeniably real. And he knew with a certainty he hadn't felt in years that his life would never be the same. The lonely soldier had received his Christmas miracle, and it was a gift that would last a lifetime. Alex stood by the window for a long time, watching the snow continue to fall. The spot where Elvis had disappeared was just another swirl of white indistinguishable from the rest of the desolate landscape. He slowly brought his hand up, opening his palm to look at the guitar pick. It was still there, black and worn, perfectly ordinary, yet impossibly miraculous. It wasn't a dream. He wasn't hallucinating. Elvis Presley had truly been here. He felt a profound sense of peace settle over him, replacing the familiar ache of loneliness. The outpost still hummed, with the generators drone. The wind still howled, but the silence no longer felt empty. It felt full pregnant with memory, with hope. He walked over to the small table and picked up the wooden hummingbird, turning it over in his fingers. He remembered Elvis's words. Even the smallest, most fragile things can hold immense beauty and hope. And Alex felt it. Hope, a fragile, beautiful thing, taking flight in his heart. He thought about Lily, not with the crushing weight of guilt, but with a gentle, bittersweet fondness. He remembered her laughter, her bright, innocent eyes, her pure joy over small things like Christmas lights. He could almost hear her voice telling him to stop being so mopey. Elvis was right. She wouldn't want him to carry that burden. She would want him to live, to find joy, to carry her light. He sat down, picking up the untouched MRE. For the first time in days, he felt hungry. Tore open the package, the processed food tasting surprisingly tolerable. As he ate, he started to think about his future, something he hadn't truly allowed himself to do in years. Pictured himself drawing again, sketching the stark beauty of these winter landscapes, perhaps even the memory of a suited figure in the snow. He imagined writing stories, maybe about this very night, or about the simple, profound connections between people. He thought about home, his parents. He knew he needed to call them, not just for a quick holiday check-in, but to truly talk, to share the weight he'd been carrying. He realized how much he had closed himself off, not just from the pain, but from the very people who loved him most. Elvis's visit wasn't just about comforting him. It was about opening him up, pushing him back towards life. The radio crackled. Outpost 7, this is Control. Weather still holding, but we've got some movement on radar. Team's on its way. Estimated arrival in 6 hours. You still seeing anything out there? Miller, negative Control, he said into the mic. His voice steady even. All clear out here. Just a quiet Christmas morning. He disconnected the mic and looked out the window again. The first rays of the true Christmas sun were breaking through the clouds, casting a golden glow on the pristine snow. The desolate landscape suddenly seemed magnificent, vast, full of unexplored beauty. It wasn't just a place of solitude. It was a place of reflection, a place where a miracle had occurred. He pulled out his worn photograph of his family. He looked at Lily's beaming face, then at his own reflection in the glass of the photo frame. He saw a man who still bore the marks of loneliness and sorrow, but also a new light in his eyes, a spark of hope and purpose that hadn't been there before. He would finish his service, honor his commitment, and then he would go home. He would draw again. He would talk to his parents about Lily truly, talk, and he would let himself grieve and then heal. He would live fully and openly just as Elvis had urged him to. The guitar pick nestled in his pocket felt like a constant reminder. King might be gone, vanished back into the impossible. But the melody he brought, the lessons he imparted, would echo in Alex's heart. Forever. This Christmas, in the loneliest place on earth, a lonely soldier had received the greatest gift of all, the gift of presence, the gift of healing, and the enduring gift of hope. And as the sun rose higher on Christmas Day, Alex knew without a doubt that he was no longer alone. Carried a piece of the king and a piece of Lily and a renewed sense of self into the new dawn.